Become a YouTube expert. I know how to do that.
Oh, so is it running fine?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. There I am,
Nope, you're
photobombing it.
You're
I'll cut
fine.
that part off. That's right. You
So-
are an expert.
Oh, yeah.
Have you got? I mean, like he is. Someday we're just gonna wake up and.
He looked pretty professional on the video.
I think so too.
I'm just sitting there. So. All right. So when you're looking both at you're looking at you're examining for all of you who are like, okay, I gotta look at my entire life. You're looking at that whole span of your life, and you are looking, and we're gonna get into this. You know what? Let's just jump into it right now. We'll come back to this. So if you look at, because people are always, are often they're asking, okay, well, what is grave matter? Oh, so there's three things that we need, or we don't need, but that need to be in place for a sin to be mortal. Mortal sin kills the life of God within us. Like I said, thanks be to God, in His mercy, He does restore that if we want Him to. So going to confession, sorry, this thread's going to spin out just a little bit here. So, and I'll come back to what are the benefits. Okay. God has given us this sacrament for incredible benefits, which we'll come back to in just a little bit. God is not looking at the population of the world who is not Catholic, He's just saying, poor fools, So God has given us the sacraments because He wants us to be in communion with Him and through the sacraments. He can work outside the sacraments, okay? But as Catholics, the normal means by which we have to have mortal sins forgiven, and venial sins as well, is this sacrament. And we can praise God for this sacrament. We'll come back to this, like I said, in just a little bit, because there's so many benefits that you receive in the sacrament that you don't receive outside the sacrament. But people will say, well, what do I need for a sin to be mortal? Three things need to be in place. One, it has to be grave matter. So if I, saw a quarter fall out of your pocket or something like that, and I took the quarter, that's wrong. That's sinful because it's theft. However, it's a quarter. It's not grave matter. If I saw a $100 bill or whatever, fall out of your pocket, that's a different matter. So it has to be serious, has to be grave matter or serious matter, kind of using that term interchangeably. The second is you have to do it with full knowledge. If I didn't know that intentionally missing Mass on a Sunday was grave matter, then it cannot be a mortal sin for me. Now, it can still harm me. Okay. For example, if somebody put a little poison in my water here and I didn't know it, I'm not guilty of drinking poison. But guess what? It's going to have an effect, an ill effect on me. Okay. So just because we don't know, ignorance is not bliss. So when we say, well, don't tell me. I'd rather not know because then it won't be sinful. Well, that doesn't really work that way. And the enemy is not like, oh, well, you didn't know. I guess I can't do anything here. Oh, he's like, oh, well, who cares? I'll work my way in through the cracks and crevices. So ignorance is not bliss. But so it has to be grave matter. We have to have full knowledge, and then there has to be full intent. In other words, you can't force somebody to commit a mortal sin. Okay. So you can't force somebody. You can force somebody to rob a bank, so to speak. They've done that before, but you're not guilty of that grave sin because you were forced to do it. We have to have freedom. So full knowledge, grave matter, and full use of our will. Okay. Now that's why I can't tell you on two of those points, full knowledge and full use of your will. I can't tell you unless God gave me something in very unique grace. I can't tell you whether or not you're in mortal sin. I can on the third point or the whatever, on one of the points, I can say, yes, that is grave matter. And if you've done it with full knowledge and full consent of your will, then you are in mortal sin. Because sometimes people will ask me that in the confession. I'm like, I don't know. I said, I can tell you if it's grave matter or not. So in the back, on page 19, begins an examination of conscience. And I tried the best that I could to sort of give some indications of what grave matter would be. If you kind of put your thumb there and you turn to the page 34, where it says a brief examination of conscience, okay, that is what I would consider those 26 points. Now, not every one of those is grave matter, but I would say I use this image that those 26 points, it's kind of a big rake. It will pull out most typical mortal sins, okay? I don't have, have you committed an act of terrorism lately? I don't have that in there because I don't think that's very common. So these are the common ones. If you go back to on page 19, so as I have under the title there, Examination of Conscience, areas of common grave matter are in bold type. Now, it was actually hard to do, not because it's hard to figure it out, but in these circumstances, for example, this would be grave matter, but in these other circumstances, it wouldn't be. So let me just kind of go through, and it's maybe more of a review of morality a little bit that Father Hess went through, but let me just kind of take a little time. I don't want to keep you forever tonight, but just let me give you a little bit of blow by blow. So if you start on page 20, and these are just the 10 Commandments broken down. Okay, so, and I'm just going to hit the bold things. There's just not enough time at this point to get into the details. And Father Hess has already gone through this. So, so I'm just going to hit, and if I have any commentary, I'm not going to maybe read it, but I'm going to read something. I'm just going to start talking. So have I received Holy Communion in the state of mortal sin? That is grave matter. If we are in mortal sin, we must first go to confession before we would receive our Lord in Holy Communion. Okay. Really bad idea to receive our Lord in Holy Communion if we're in mortal sin, because not only is that another sin, it's a mortal sin, it's actually a sacrilege, which is sort of, it's almost like you hit your best friend in the face with a baseball bat, then you spit on him. It's a stupid analogy, but it just add insult to injury. And it's dangerous from a spiritual perspective, because people will say, well, I just missed receiving Jesus. Guess what? If we are in mortal sin and we receive our Lord in Holy Communion, not only do we receive no grace whatsoever, but we actually end up in a worse shape than we were before. So bad thing. Do I refuse to hold as true what God has revealed and the church presents for our belief? That doesn't mean that we struggle. Very, 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 very different. If I'm like, you know what, I really am trying to understand this, you know what? Okay, we're in a good spot, even though we might be struggling. That's very different than just saying, to use a colloquial term, screw the church. I don't really care what the church says. Okay, not like, for something minor, but something significant. Now, I guess there are people that, anyway. But so that, if it's a serious issue, then the church says, well, you get the point. I'm not going to, because we'll be here all night. So, have I intentionally endangered my faith by freely exposing myself to material or people who would put that faith at risk? That doesn't mean that we can't be friends with people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if I'm like, I'm taking an extreme example here, but if I'm like, my one friend, which you really would suggest not having these kind of friends, but my one friend's a Satanist, and he said, hey, you want to go to a black mass? Sure, I've never seen a black mass before. Let's just go to a black mass, see what it's like. Okay, that's an extreme example. But, if your faith is weak, you don't want to hang around people that either their faith also is weak, or they're like, oh, you know what, why don't you come to my church? Well, they're a lot more friendly than, this and that. You don't want to, if a flame of a candle, is not, it's powerful, it can set the world on fire, okay, but also it can be blown out very easily. So our faith is a treasure. We want to protect that. Anyway, getting too much in the weeds on some of these, but okay, I'm not going to go through all the details of the next one, but New Age, occult, witchcraft, fortune telling, secret society. You can't be a Mason and be Catholic because it's contrary to the faith. Could be a schismatic group, this and that. If you have any questions about that, just ask one of us, and we'd be glad to kind of, But all that stuff, this is not. There's no such thing as white magic. That's a bunch of, baloney. Okay, white magic, black magic, it all comes from one source. Everything either comes from God or comes, preternatural powers can come from Satan. White magic, no. So we do not want to even get into that area. Yep. So intentionally, if you told a lie in the confessional, not like if the priest says, "Hey, is it raining outside?" and you're like, "I don't know." Maybe you even panic and like, I don't know, and it's raining outside. That's not. But if the priest says, "Okay, you said it's a bad thing, so can you, or if you're like trying to, anyway, you get my point. It's like if the priest says, "So did you beat your neighbor up?" and your neighbor's in the ER because of what you did to him, and you're like, "No." Well, okay, that's you. I've never had that before. For all the things that we've heard in the confessional, there's a ton of stuff we've never heard and probably never will hear. Okay, I haven't heard kidnapping and terrorism and things of that nature. Maybe if you were in New York or something. So, number two. Now, blasphemy is different than using our Lord's name carelessly. Okay, so not a good idea. Don't use God's name in any derivation or a Blessed Mother's name carelessly. Don't do that. Don't get into that habit. If you are in a habit, break that habit. Blasphemy. Now, this is one of those things where I just say uttering words of hatred or reproach against God. Do you, Father Hess, do you have any? This is one of those things where people are like, well, what's blasphemy? Like, it's a, no, I don't say it's a famous scene. I don't watch many movies, but it's one of the Indiana Jones movies, when, I think it's not the last one, but the one where they search the Holy Grail or something like that, where whatever his dad's name is, where he, Harrison Ford says something, uses God's name, wrongly, and he takes his glove and slaps and says, "That's for blasphemy." Now, I don't know if that really is blasphemy or if it was just a careless use, of the name. Is there anything? Because I've always struggled to really understand. Because I don't think it's people like, well, let me give you an example of blasphemy. I think you want to really just so.
I guess anything that you would basically be diminishing God. So, like, if you were to, I don't know, you're talking to your friends about who God is, and you actually knowingly are being deceptive about God. God actually doesn't know everything. That kind of a thing. Or God doesn't actually love everybody. So that would be kind of blasphemy, like deceit or disregarding something of the nature of God. Also, maybe not carelessness with the name of God, but mocking God.
Oh yeah, that would be a good
mocking God, mocking the saints, mocking the Blessed Mother. So maybe there's this famous art piece, I don't know that you guys heard about. That's basically the Blessed Virgin with urine in a cup of urine or something like that. This little statue.
That's blasphemous.
That would be blasphemous.
Yes, that's a good example.
So saying,
"Oh my," fill in the blank. That's using our Lord's, and you have a bad habit of all of a sudden someone just scared you. You're like, "Oh my," that's using our Lord's name in vain. Not good. Break the habit. Get out of it. But that's different than being blasphemous or intentionally trying to misrepresent God and His goodness, etc., etc. So there is blasphemy out there. I mean, and sometimes I'm amazed of where that blasphemy. A number of years ago, gosh, I was just new in Rushi, so it's probably whatever, however many years ago. That UD. Marian University, they had this Marian art show where you're like, what in the world? I'm not saying it anywhere near you because lightning should strike you dead. God's mercy is not going to. I shouldn't say that. That's judgmental on my part. But it's horrible. It was totally blasphemous. So, when we say, oh, I swear to God. No, that, now if that you should not do that, as our Lord says, let your yes be yes, your no be no. Now, there are certain cases where, because of the importance of it, where, in a courtroom, where you take an oath on a Bible, etc., that's fine. Now, if you break that oath, if you, lie, under that oath, that is mortally sin, or that's grave matter. Okay, we should not get into that habit of just saying, "Oh, well, I swear to." No, just say, "No." Our word should say, there should be an integrity in our life, etc., etc. Okay, you kind of the rest. More or less is. Lots to cover. Okay, Lord's Day, deliberately missing Mass on Sundays or holy days without a serious reason. So you're not ill, not like, oh, I can't go to Mass today. It's like, I just threw up for the 5th time. Don't go to Mass. Not only can you. What about right now? Because I know we're going to have people, and God bless them, who will, after everything is done and said, they'll be coming and they'll be like, Father, I missed Mass like 20 times or however many times. Say this is not, the obligation has been lifted. If you're on a cruise, so to speak, if you're like a kind of a cruise kind of person, and you're like, well, we were in the middle of the ocean on Sunday and there was no priest on board and I couldn't go to Mass. Did I sin? No, you did not. Now, if you're like, hey, I'm on vacation, I don't have to go to Mass. Did you sin gravely? Well, if you're in the middle of nowhere and there's no priest available, no. Although if that was your intention, you're like, this is awesome, I'm going to try to find a vacation where I don't have to go to Mass. Yes, you got problems. But if you're on vacation and you're like, I have no idea, I can't find, or you have no transportation, or you're on a fishing trip in the middle of, the Alaskan wilderness, well, yeah, So if you can't get to Mass, you can't get to Mass. There's no obligation. But that all being said, you have to kind of look at if you intentionally, like the days of abstinence, so no meat on Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, and all the other Fridays of Lent. If you accidentally eat meat on one of those days, okay, it was an accident. Okay, if you're like, the heck with the church, this is crazy, and you go ahead and meet, well, it's grave matter. Only God knows your heart, so whether you have, intentionally, or you have sinned in a grievous way, mortally, God knows. Anyway, when I don't have anything under the 4th commandment that is grave, okay, do you abuse your parents, your elderly parents? Well, yeah, that'd be grave. Okay, but, these are common. It's not things that just didn't seem like there was anything common that I should put in there. Killing, okay. Have you physically harmed someone? If you're like, if I go up to Father Heston, like, well, that was stupid, and I give him, on the shoulder, I'd probably be like, ow, oh, ow. He's like, what, did you touch me? But if he's like, ow, that hurt, it's not like, oh, I just I grievously sinned, But if you do, harm, you're like, I am going to take this bat upside your head, yeah, that's over the top, I shouldn't laugh, but sometimes I'm like, really? I was helping somebody, had been away from the sacrament for a while, helping somebody walk through it. I said, well, have you ever abused alcohol or drugs? And they're like, well, I've been drunk a whole bunch, but I've never abused alcohol. What part of this, and I'm not trying to make fun of it, I'm just like, so I'm like, oh, dang it, I have to redo this whole book. And so that's why I put in the bag, have you intentionally altered your state of consciousness, by you? I'm like, how many times do you have to? But anyway, so if I use alcohol or drugs to intentionally alter my state of consciousness, so yes, if that's the case, yes, that is grave matter. Okay, here's the rule of thumb for this. Is what I would say. Okay, if your intention, whether alcohol or drugs, drugs, there's no like, well, I only use drugs to, no. Drugs are just drugs. So it's just a clear boundary. Anything that you're not using for a medical reason, that you're over the top. Alcohol, does that mean you can't drink? No. Okay, but if someone were to say, I'm going out and getting wasted tonight, yes, grave matter. If you say, whoa, that was a lot stronger than I thought, and I'm feeling the effects of it. Okay, at that point, if you're like, oh, what the heck, I'll just have another one. Yes, you walked over to grave matter. If at that point you're like, okay, I'm done. I'm not drinking anymore. All right, so you're not grave matter because you didn't know. If you're like, so you have to look at the intentionality on in that regards. Okay, having an abortion, encouraging someone to have an abortion, helping someone to have an abortion, yes, grave matter. Euthanasia, the same thing. Sometimes I'm gonna save my comments. So, attempting suicide. Now that does not mean that people who commit suicide commit a mortal sin. We don't know. But committing or seriously attempting suicide is by its nature is of grave matter. We don't know the person's heart, where they're at. So we cannot say, well, that person who committed suicide, is in mortal sin, therefore is not with God in heaven or is even in purgatory. We don't know. And the church on this issue tends to be very generous in mercy, okay? And but the action itself is not the action itself is grave matter. And I know people who are alive today because they were very tempted to commit suicide because of hardships they were enduring or whatever the situation might have been in their life. And they said, I knew it was a grave sin, therefore I didn't do it. I know someone in my own family that went through a very rough time and had a complete mental breakdown and had to be institutionalized for a little bit, and is now deceased. But she didn't go. She had the means. She had all kinds of medication. She could have. She was a medical student basically. She knew how to do this. She said, "No, I didn't do it because I knew it was gravely wrong." Kept her alive. So this is actually a good thing. It's a good thing that the church says, from an objective standpoint, this because it has saved lives. Okay. So anyway, it's a side issue. Well, not really. To scandal to anyone, no, boy, it depends on the situation, You told a sort of an off-color joke, well, that's not a grave matter. But if you, I don't know, did whatever, like you've led, did you let a child into that versus an adult or this or that, so you just gotta look at the situation. Let's see, or putting someone in a, like, oh, I bet you can't do that. No, there's no way you could do X, Y, or Z when you know that that's a dangerous thing or whatever it is, or, you get the point. Harboring hatred or seeking revenge. We might say, stand that guy. He's such a jerk. That's probably not a good state for us to be in, and we need to kind of rectify that. But if we're like, man, what can I do? You just sort of daydream about just taking it back to his head. Okay, you're over the top. You've crossed the line. So. Driving dangerously. Okay. Well, okay. Like, I'm going faster than I should. Versus, sometimes we all have seen it. You're like, well, where is the cop now? When people are just weaving in and out. Going 85 miles an hour. Tony's like, wait, what? That's wrong. I'm just kidding. When you're like, you idiot. You practically, okay, that's if you're doing that intentionally, which usually they probably are. Okay, that could be a great matter. Eating habits, if you're like, well, this is only my second box of a dozen donuts for watching this television show. Yeah, you're over the top. So, versus like, oh man, I'm really stuffed. Okay, that might just be like, I ate too much. I need to kind of look at that, and so number 6, you're like, my goodness, everything under this commandment's like grave. Well, it's. Tell you what, we're going to spend a little bit of time on this, and then we're going to go back and, I don't want to take advantage of your generosity of coming at 6 o'clock, so I'm not going to keep you, is this going to go forever? It's not. This is an area of within our culture, completely is checked out on. We have no idea. We think, but if it wasn't so serious, it'd be ironic. The sad thing is, the culture thinks they know everything about sexuality, and that the church is just totally way behind the times and just completely out in pasture land and just is completely irrelevant, and nothing can be further from the truth. Our culture has no idea of what they have unlocked. The Catechism of the Catholic Church talks about God placed within us the powers of life and love. I always say to people, life and love. Seems pretty powerful to me. I can't think of anything more powerful than life and love. Okay, so we're talking really in us at the very core of who we are, we have such an incredible power. The enemy is completely sterile. So the enemy cannot produce, cannot be fruitful, can't actually bring life. He has to steal life. He has to take something that is good and corrupt it. It's like rust. Rust doesn't exist as an element, okay, on the periodic chart. It is a corruption of something, in this case iron or whatever it may be. So the enemy takes good things and twists them, corrupts them. Okay? Eating is a good thing. Okay? It's good for our body, in the sense it gives us energy, et cetera, et cetera. And it's enjoyable, Most people enjoy eating, But the enemy then takes that good and corrupts it. So we eat too much or this or that or whatever, we're gluttonous. Well, if it's a silly example, but if you're at war with an enemy, and your enemy has a nuclear bomb, and you got a stick, you're like, well, this is not going to go well. So you're going to say, and granted, I guess I'm putting you in the place of the devil. But you're like, okay, I need to get that so I can use it against him. Well, as you're walking towards your enemy's camp, and you stumble over something, you're like, what is that? I'm like, it's my enemy's slingshot. Oh, this is good. This is all I need. I'm going back to camp because I got a stick and a slingshot. This is going to work out well. Well, no, you might put it in your pocket to say, I might need this. I might use this. Okay? So the Satan is an opportunist. He'll take whatever he can get. But you're still going for the big stuff. Okay, the enemy, it will take anything that he finds sort of lying around. But he's going to go for the big stuff. That's why he tries to reach deep within us to take those powers of life and love that God has given us in his goodness and just to do so many incredible things, and he then corrupts that, or he seeks to corrupt it. That's why there's so much in this one, because the enemy is like, this is powerful. I mean, heck, it's so powerful that 9 months later, you might have to give it a name, or him or her a name. Okay, this is powerful. Powers of life and love, the gift of sexuality. So, I just kind of go through this, and I'll give a bit of commentary, because I think it's, although Father has, I'm sure, already done this, this is probably something that in some respects can't give enough explanation because it's so contrary, so absolutely contrary to what our culture says. Our culture basically is saying anymore now, our really conservative elements of the culture are like, you know what, be a good boy, okay, find a young woman, get married, don't have sex before, and raise your family, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the very, 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 very best we got. Because that doesn't even talk about, what about contraception? What about this or that or whatever it is? And people are like, well, hey, once you get married, anything goes. And most people would be like, oh, I guess if you agree about it, then that should be fine. That's the very best we got in the culture. We got the other side of the coin, or the other side of the spectrum, I should say. And trust me, it's all coming. If we think, wow, premarital sex is all over the place. It's it is a very common sin that we hear in the confessional. And everything that kind of comes with this, all the kind of elements that come with this, adultery, extramarital sex, why even bother getting married anymore, this and that, everything like that. And this, my points on this is not to call anybody out individually or as a group. Okay, so, homosexual inclinations, and the inclinations are very different than acting upon them. We'll talk about this in a moment. But that's not to call them out. My heart goes out for people that struggle with this. But we cannot just say, well, it's okay. We'll just make it all kind of normal. Okay, all the gender identity confusion, yada, yada, yada. And trust me, it's all coming. Polygamy, it's coming. all kinds of weird stuff that you were like, couldn't possibly get any worse than this. Oh yeah, I can. Because all those things were totally, like for example, the Roman Empire, all that kind of stuff. Pedophilia, oh, it's all coming. It's already here to a certain extent. It's all coming. If we don't do something to shift ourselves radically from the trajectory we're on, it's all coming. All those things that, granted, some of us are a little bit older than others, but so they're like, what in the world? What the heck is that? Oh, it's all coming. It's all coming. It's all going to be normalized through our social media and television, Hollywood. It's all going to be, if we don't change, this is why this is, not that this is a pivot point. Anyway, so, sorry, going off my little tangents here. So, any kind of sexual activity outside of it, the gift of sexuality is so powerful, so beautiful, that it can only function in that free way, is in the beautiful, powerful way within the safety of marriage, and that ability to be vulnerable with spouses. And I'm not going to go into a whole marriage prep and everything like that, but this is where it's the only place that it can be a place where it can be truly human, and it can actually do so much good. It's so powerful. So that's why the enemy hits on it so hard. So premarital sex is gravely wrong. Okay? Any impure touching, overly passionate kissing, oral sex, yada yada, the whole 9 yards. I don't want to be graphic here, but so all that stuff outside of marriage, it's not going to work. What about inside marriage? Does anything count? Is that people will talk about, well, how could it be wrong to lust after my wife? You don't lust after anyone. I'm picking on you because I'm a guy, so it's just easier for me to say things as a guy's perspective. It's not okay to lust after anyone, because lusting is basically saying I'm using you as an object. And let's face it, all of us have been trained, but all of us guys have really been trained by our culture to view women as objects. Every one of us has been, unfortunately, trained to do that. And we don't fight against it. It's just, that's kind of, and I'm not talking about just the pornography. I'm talking about advertisement. How many times in a beer commercial, when you got this, this scantily clad woman, you're like, man, I wonder if she is fulfilling her deepest desires in life. I wonder if she knows Jesus. I wonder if she's happy. You're not thinking about that. You're like, my gosh, look at her body. She's just, and everyone's, I was watching this years ago, this commercial for like, looking at a black Visa card or something. And of course it has this scantily clad, voluptuous woman on there. It has nothing to do with Visa card, other than you're like, wait, if I get a Visa card, do I start attracting women like that? It doesn't make any sense. Other than, hey, guys, look over here. The whole thing. Okay, here's like the absolute, like, for some people, this is the make or break. Like, what? The church is still like completely behind the times when it comes to contraception. If anyone tells you, oh, well, this is really up to your own opinion, or, maybe it won't be Pope Francis, but it's going to be the next Pope that changes all this, just don't listen to them. If they're family, you got to stay with them. If they're friends, you might want to pick a different friend, okay? Because they're completely off kilter. Let me just give you, because this is such a radically, like, wild, like, you got to be kidding that the church, let me give you a little context. And this is just my attempt. So, if you look at contraception, okay, so there are two basic methods, barrier and chemical. Probably both have been around more or less since the dawn of the ages. Okay, it doesn't make it any more right. Murder has been around since the dawn of the ages. Unfortunately, that obviously is not right. So you look at chemical contraception in a modern context, as we know it. So in the late 50s, okay, which interesting enough, for all of you coming from Protestant backgrounds, the laws in this country were such, until even some places within the last even 30-ish years, the laws against selling contraception, there were laws against that. They were all put on the books because of Protestants, not because of Catholics. all Christians, Catholics, Protestants, everybody before about 1930 were all on board saying contraception, that's a bad thing. Barrier or chemical or any other version, whatever else you can think of. 1930, there was a conference with the Anglicans over in England called the Lambeth Conference. And the Anglicans said, well, under certain circumstances, very specific circumstances, we think we could allow this in marriage. And for some odd reason, no one, well, I shouldn't say odd reason, but no one has ever heard this expression before. Maybe because you have some background in it. Maybe it's a Cincinnati thing. The camel's nose under the tent? Okay, so the camel's nose under the tent. If you're in the tent and all of a sudden you see the camel's nose sticking underneath it, the bad sign, because the rest of the camel is going to will soon to follow. So within about 25 to 30 years, you went from the Anglicans saying, well, we have this slight exception, to all of a sudden the Catholics were the last ones like, wait, no, this is not okay. You know, every Protestant denomination got on board with, hey, contraception. It went from slight, in this very narrow kind of interpretation, but to like, okay, well, it really, any time. At that point, it was still only in marriage. People were still like, oh, no, you can't have sex before marriage. That's not okay, you know. So in the early or late 50s, they were coming up with, now I'm not trying to be graphic, but just to be precise, which I think precision with this is I think important. So they were coming up with a chemical form of contraception, a reliable method, if you will. We know it today as the pill. You can kind of extrapolate from this. The pill, the patch, the ring, whatever the delivery method, the chemical kind of components are sort of more or less the same. So at that point, late 50s, early 60s, I don't know, who's going to take this pill? Is it the men or is it the women? Right? So they had two different test groups because they had two different versions of the pill. The male version of the pill and the female version of the pill, which, guys, I bet you've never, well, it's very likely you've never heard it. Like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean that men would be taking this pill? Well, in the male group, once again, not to be crude or anything, but one man had a slight shrinkage in one of his testicles. Well, that's dangerous. I'm not going to do that, you know. And by the way, in the women's group, I think it was 3 women died. They lowered the dosage, and they marketed it as a pill for women. You know anything about biology, you're like, wait a second. Women's chemical composition, okay, you two women, you are a very complex being. Okay, from just from a chemical reality. Actually, literally. Now for us guys, we got, you know, if we're looking at the sexual hormones, we got one hormone. It is pretty much consistent. It's just, and that's kind of why, you know, guys are kind of like the same the day before, the day after, and that today. You're like, just sort of, you know, yeah, we're sort of this mediocre. We're kind of beige in that sense, you know. Whereas women, literally, from a biochemical standpoint, you are literally a different entity. Now, not day to day necessarily. Some of you married men might think that, you know, but you are literally. There are points in that cycle where you are biochemically very different. You know, and there's a complexity. It's a beautiful interchange between the hormones and everything of that nature. And but it's a very complex. It's much more complicated. Why in the world, if you were like, God, the male hormone is just too hard to control. It's just we can't figure it out. But we're going to give this. We're going to pump the women full of chemicals so that and what the first red flag to be like, wait, how many women died? They died. What? Why is it the pill still today? It's not like now you can put a man on the moon, all kinds of things. You know, we just can't figure out. Cannot figure out how to get that male. Well, we can figure out how to boost the male testosterone. We just can't figure out how to control it. Whose needs is this serving? Who's really allowed to, in a sinful way, dominate? So now we're like, okay, you women. Okay, here's how it breaks down. Well, see, men get to set the standard, but not in a true, authentic masculine, you know, new Adam kind of way, but in a sinful Adam kind of way, in a fallen Adam, like the first Adam. We're allowed to set the standard. men can have sex and we don't get pregnant. That's the norm. You ladies, you're kind of subnormal because, see, you can have sex and you can get pregnant. But don't worry, we'll fix that problem. Take this pill, and you think about a pill. And so a lot of this is coming from, this is not my original, these ideas. So if you're like, that's pretty clever, the father, I'm sure I got the idea from, this is from Janet Smith, Dr. Janet Smith. A pill indicates there is a problem to be fixed. So you have a headache, take an aspirin. You have, you're sick, take an antibiotic. A vitamin pill indicates a deficiency in your diet. So a pill indicates there's a problem to be fixed. And so we're basically saying to women, okay, well, there's a bit of a problem. See, you can have sex and get pregnant, but we'll fix that. You're subnormal, but we'll get you up to the norm. Take this pill. What does that make the women have to be like? To become normal, to become accepted, women have to become like men. And so now, all of a sudden, contraception makes a woman to be like a man. Now you are normal because you can have sex and not get pregnant. But you stop and think, you kind of pull this back a little bit. You set aside for a moment the mysteries of our faith, the Trinity, the Holy Eucharist, the Incarnation, things like that. The greatest miracle to happen, like I said, you're setting aside those divine miracles, and not that this isn't, God's very involved in this, but the greatest miracle to happen is this creation of new life. When that little baby comes into existence, it's not like he existed, or she existed before this. It's not like God's like, here's a soul. It's not like God created like warehouses of souls at the time of Genesis, like, oh yeah, here's one right there, there's one there. It's like a little mini Genesis that happens. This little being, this little person, never existed before, and that will exist forever. And that miracle, the husband contributes, the wife contributes, but I always say that miracle happens within the woman, which is a pretty profound sort of highlighting of this very unique dignity that women have. It doesn't mean women are better than men. You don't want to play that stupid game. But there is something utterly unique. There is something very beautiful that miracle happens within her, and she nourishes that miracle for the next, 9 months roughly. Well, contraception says, yeah, whatever. We fixed that whole problem. We got it all taken care of, Well, no. Contraception basically says, I tell you what, this point, sometimes you just have these experiences as a priest, you're like, I got nothing to say, but I'll remember this for the rest of my priesthood. So I had a confessional situation. I don't know, I have no memory of really who it was, but it was a woman. She's married. I think she's Catholic, and I think her husband was not Catholic. And I think I knew enough about her. I knew that it wasn't like an abusive relationship. I mean, it was fine, But he insisted that she use some kind of contraception or something. Some contraception was used. It doesn't make any difference if the woman's taken or if it's a barrier method on the part of the man. Because she said, no, I will never forget this. And I had nothing to say. How would I respond to it? She said she was so torn up about this. He insisted on using, I think he insisted on using, not to be crude or anything, he insisted on using condoms. She said, I'm a prostitute. I'm being treated like a prostitute because I always have to be available. And she said, I'm a cheap prostitute because I don't even get paid for it. I'm like, but her insight was spot on. Because, see, the beautiful thing about the church's perspective, or the church's teaching on this beautiful one flesh union. I like to use that term because it's biblical, and also because our culture, when we say sex, it's got all kinds of baggage that comes with it. So I like using that term, that one flesh union. That one flesh union is, like I said, powerful. Uniting the couple with God, and it may be so powerful that 9 months later you have to give the little person a name. But the church's teaching about this is so beautiful, so free. It doesn't look like that from a contraceptive mentality from our culture. It doesn't look like that at all. It looks like we're just totally behind on the technology curve. Okay, which I'll come back to that in just a moment. But the church's teaching on this is so powerful because the church says, hey, since when is it the woman's problem to deal with? The woman has a unique contribution, that gift of fertility, and so too does the man. The husband contributes in a beautiful, authentically masculine way, and the wife contributes in a beautiful, feminine way. And the two complement each other beautifully. And if you use that, I would say accurately, but this is not a romantic way of kind of putting all this, but then it actually draws the couple together. Okay, because so the church would say it is a responsibility for both. Now the church doesn't say, okay, you must use natural family planning, but the church says, look, you can't use contraception. The church actually is not trying to be restrictive. The church is just saying, don't use that because that stuff is dangerous. Don't use that. The church would say, well, natural family planning seems to work very well. So yeah, but you can't use contraception. Dangerous. It's kind of like, for those of us who are familiar with Montana, if you've ever been, got to go out to Glacier National Park one of these days. Have you ever been out there, Missy? Okay, going to the Sun Road. If you've never, if you don't like heights, if you're a little wigged out by that, it might be a little bit of a struggle for you. But there's a reason. You think, oh my goodness, you're on the side of a mountain, and but like for example, well, anyway, I'm not going to go into it. But if you have, of course, they don't have any barriers.
You drive to the roads.
Yeah, because it's just Montana. You don't need.
Right.
But yeah, because you're tough out in Montana. But in other places, they put a barrier up, so you're like, okay, I can't, because the barrier, you're not like cursing, like, I can't believe they put that barrier up, because this is just restricting my freedom. If I want to drive off that cliff, I should be able to do that. Well, you're an idiot, You're like, hey, that barrier, that's a good thing, because it will help. In case you're like, wait, I lost control, hit a little slick spot, you bang into the barrier, but you don't fall off the cliff or the bridge or whatever it is. You're not cursing the day that they put those barriers up. You're like, oh, thanks be, that they put those, yeah. Well, the church is just putting the barriers up. Don't use contraception. You have freedom, however you want to, peel that onion, so to speak, okay? Now, sometimes I will talk through this with couples, and they'll look at me very patiently throughout the entire talk. And then at the very end, they'll be like, what is this NFP you keep referring to? And I'm like, oh, shoot, I guess I should explain that. So natural family planning, I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence, but basically, a woman's system is such that, and actually with some of our advances in technology, we can, well, two competing points, so I got to say it one at a time. So we can look to see, oh, this is when a woman is fertile. And actually, there are people within the medical community helping couples with infertility. That's what they're trying to find out. At least that's part of the equation, okay? Because if you're struggling with infertility and you want to get pregnant, well, that's like your window of opportunity. That's what you write. So you want to really be able to tell, well, when is the woman going to be fertile, okay? Now, it's interesting because the millennial generation is really actually picking up on the natural family planning, not for moral reasons, or not for the reasons of, because I always say, look, openness to life, and by the way, the Catholic perspective of openness to life does not mean you got to have as many kids as you physically possibly can. What do you mean you only have 20? That's pathetic. You can do better than that. Come on, get working. That is not what the church is saying, because you know what? I always say to people, look, do not play the numbers. If you want to play the numbers, go out and buy a lottery ticket. Don't play the numbers with God, because God is the author of all life. So you might say, we want 5 children, and God might be saying, that's a little bit small. I want you to have 8, and you might be thinking, we want 10 kids, and God might be like, no, I'm only going to give you 3, and you might be saying, we want 4, and God say, I'm not going to give you any of your own. So you can always suggest, but God's the author of life. So if you want to play the numbers game, I always say, you know what, just take 1 kid at a time. I have some beautiful stories about that, but I don't have enough time. But go 1 child at a time. Because you'll never, ever, 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 your 50th wedding anniversary, you're not going to be looking at your wife thinking, why did we have Jimmy? Oh my gosh, what a horrible mistake that was. But you will maybe at that point think, oh, maybe we should have had, that, what is it, buyer's regret or whatever, well, I guess that's not buyer's regret. Right? But anyway, I get those things
Depends on how long
confused.
this quarantine lasts.
Well, that's true. Well, they say that there will be a baby boom come maybe, late fall or winter or something of that nature, that's a good thing. Babies are good. Kids are good. Kids are, the human
Even
person
yours
is
behind the
good.
glass?
Yeah. But now the church is not saying you got to have as many kids as you physically possibly can. But this is a very critical statement, and I will I'll bank everything on this. And I always tell couples, look, openness to life, which does not mean you have to be physically trying to get pregnant every time. Okay. There's no way to detail this out slowly or you might think it's very slow or very simply in a very short period of time. But openness to life is openness to God, which is openness to each other, the spouses. It's as simple as that. You want to get closer together? You got to get closer to God. Is that called a direct or an indirect proportion? I don't know. I'm not good at math. But if you want to get closer together, God's the only one. He's the branch. He's the vine. You're the branch. So, and if you want to get closer to each other, openness to life. Because openness to life is openness to the other. Openness to God. Anyway, millennials are actually discovering this concept of intentional family planning, not because of moral reasons, but because of health reasons. Why would we want to be pumping the women of our culture full of chemical, compounds that are, for the most part, maybe all synthetic, okay, which actually leaches into the water table, interestingly enough, and is really messing things up. I thought when I first heard that, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. I had hydro engineers doing marriage prep, and he's like, oh, no, that's really true. We observe that quite a bit. And you look at the warnings, or you look at here are the side effects. Okay, great. Every woman wants, some chemical injected into her body, introduced somehow, pill, patch, ring, whatever it may be, that make her feel more irritable, nauseated, bloated, gain. Yeah, that's exactly what women want. And that's exactly what their husbands want as well. I want you to be more temperamental, this, that. Those are the things that are like, hey, these are our side effects. And then they're like, oh, by the way, these are the warnings that we were required by law to put on there, but don't really read them because, that'll never happen. I could go on and on and on. The church's wisdom about this is never going to change. And you might think, well, that's just because the church just doesn't change. Back in the early 60s, the church said, well, let's examine it. Everybody else is changing. There's pressure on us to possibly change. We'll examine it. Okay? They started a commission. Pope Paul VI started a commission. I think it probably would have been about 1963, and said, we will examine this. Now, I think the commission went on too long, but that's beside the point. And the majority of people in the commission said, yep, the church should change. Pope Paul VI came out in 1968, letter, apostolic, or encyclical, Humanae Vitae, on human life. And he said, we can't change. And some people just freaked out. There were priests that freaked out. Okay. Why did the church say this? Why did Pope Paul VI say we cannot change? He says, look, we can't alter what is God's sort of the way he has designed the human person in light of being in his image and likeness. He said, because everyone was like, contraception is the new sliced bread. This is going to be awesome. It's going to help marriages be stronger. It's going to help women find a new dignity. It's just going to help with everything. And people, honestly, it's also going to, because you know there's going to be this population bomb, and people are going to be starving everywhere. And we got to solve that problem because there are, I don't know at the time, probably there are probably not even this many. There are 4 billion people on this earth, and we can't support everybody. They're all going to die. So we got to solve this in contraception. So they're like, okay, this contraception is going to help in all these ways. And Pope Paul VI said, hate to burst your bubble, but He said, if contraception becomes normative, these are the things that are going to happen. There's going to be a general lowering in morality. He does not take, this is 1968, not take a rocket scientist to look back and think, 52 years later, oh yeah, definitely we got hit on that one. I don't remember where he put in, or the whole thing with marriage. But women will not, there will not be a rise in women's dignity. Women will be, I don't know how he worded it, but the whole issue of women's dignity, divorce. And we think, oh, divorce just happened to come. There's a demographer at the University of Stanford many years ago who studied, he said, okay, here's contraception. In their early 60s, contraception is still, not really available. By the mid-70s, contraception is pretty much available to whoever wanted it. So I think it's called a sigmoid curve, where it kind of comes up and then it levels out. Looked at the divorce rates. 1965, divorce rates in this country about 25%. Guess what? Divorce rates parallel that same sigmoid curve by the mid-70s, 50%. I'm not going to go into all the details of why that is, but there are plenty of reasons. But you see, it has not helped marriage, okay? It has not, because basically, you know what? Now that cute secretary at work, she's more available now than she was before because we got this contraception. This is great, And so extramarital, why do you even have to be married to have sex? Why not premarital? Okay, premarital, okay. Why do you have to even be between a man and a woman? Well, why not? Let's just go with that, whatever it is. The list goes on and on and on. Pope Paul VI also said, look, this general lowering morality, it's going to hurt the dignity of women. It's going to give governments basically a tool to control people. Let's say China. That's one example. The U.S. Pope John Paul II referred to this as contraceptive imperialism. Say, African country X, you're pretty poor. Okay, you need education, education grants and whatever. Help. Maybe you need medical aid. Okay, great, we can get that. Maybe you even need some, defensive, whatever. Maybe we go. By the way, you're going to take our family planning project or our family planning, whatever version of it. And they're like, we like kids. Kids are our future. Children are good. We don't care. Whatever. Here. And, all kinds of stuff they outlawed. I think it was Norplant, I think it was. They outlawed in this country. Oh, yeah, we're still giving it to the third world because, third world people, we like third world people. Because they're all, those are different kind of people. We don't want them because, it's just this imperialistic attitude of like, we will not allow you to have children. And you forced all kinds of stuff. And you can tell I'm a little passionate about this. It's just frustrating because nobody ever talks about this. And then Pope Paul VI said, by the way, it will also give us a false sense of power over our bodies. Yep, all kinds of different things, which we won't have time to get into all tonight. So I'm going to cut to the chase. We'll have to we'll meet again, but yeah. All sorts of things, in vitro fertilization, cloning. How is cloning going to be a good thing? Yeah, is it already happening? I'm sure it is. It's all kinds of different things, and people are like, Pope Paul VI, what an idiot, stick in the mud, typical Catholic. None of this is going to come true. Oh yeah, it all came true in spadesfuls. Chemical contraception, barrier methods, whatever it is, artificial birth control, whatever you want to call it. The church, like I said, actually says, hey, you know what? There's a really easy way. And let me end with, when I say end with, I don't mean quite. Let me end with this topic, and then I'll get some basic points, and then will be it. I guarantee you, tell me normally 6:30.
We should go to about, if we went to the hour and a half, we'd be done at 8 probably.
I'm going to try to make this done by 8:15, so you just give me a few more minutes here. So the church says, oh, hey, by the way, contraception, artificial birth control, bad. Okay, but you know what? You need to kind of figure out how to do this, and natural family planning is an awesome way. Why? Contraception, any form, whatever it is, about 50% rate of divorce. Okay, national average, this and that. Couples who use NFP, okay, looking at Okay, the cycle of the woman, being able to, I mean, my gosh, anymore now, all, you know, if you want to use like a thermal, you know, symptothermal method, before she gets out of bed, what, probably now you just have to stick something in your forehead, in your ear, beep, you know. I grew up in the time where you're like, let me shake this thermometer down. I still love that. I still use that. I mean, I'm checking my temperature, like, do I have the coronavirus? You know, like, you know, like, you're trying to read it. You're like, okay. Oh, yeah, there it is. You know, I still love that. Anyway, not that I love taking my temperature, but I just love the old school technology. Anyway, so, I mean, anymore now, you're just like, you know, whatever. Or I don't know, however they do it. You got an app, put it in your phone. You don't even have to look at it. You're like, it's charting it for yourself. You're like, okay, well, here's the time that, you know, the woman's fertile. Okay, so just say rough. It doesn't. You don't have to be exact. I mean, in a sense, you don't have to be like your cycle has to be. You know, this is not the rhythm method. Like, well, approximately this many. You know, it's very precise. Okay, so it's irregular or regular cycles or anywhere in between. And so, roughly, let's say once a month. Okay, the couple has to have a discussion. You know, the husband and wife have to have a discussion. I'm going to be very stereotypical in this. So, excuse my very stereotypical examples. So, they're like, okay, well, what do we want to do? And she's like, what do you mean, what do we want to do? Are you nuts? I got 3 kids under the age of 5, and you don't do a darn thing around this house. You come home and you expect everything to be waiting on you. I know it. You know, that's a painful conversation. But she's like, oh, okay, well, I stand convicted, and I gotta change my ways, okay? Or, like I said, very stereotypical. I apologize, but you know, he's like, "What? We can't? Are you kidding? How are we gonna afford another kid? The neighbor has something, and I gotta, you know, you gotta get the same thing, and I gotta have 2 jobs to support. You're crazy, you know." Okay, very stereotypical. I apologize. These are painful conversations. They need to be had. Guess what? Your contraception might be years before you ever have that conversation. Maybe you never have that conversation, but the resentment's there. Jerk, why doesn't he do something around here? What, my gosh, why didn't she do this or that, everything like that? They're hard conversations. You got to have them every month. Well, are we? Oh, what do we think? What are we thinking? The great thing about natural family planning is you don't have to be like, I think this is a good time. Well, when will the chemicals leach out of your body so that maybe we can do this? Which, by the way, all chemical contraception works in 2 different ways. It either prevents prevents ovulation, which then, you know, prevents, you know, new life, or, which probably happens this more times than not because the whole issue of synthetic estrogen leading to breast cancer, this and that, so you can lower that, so you can have lower amounts of estrogen, you're going to have more what they call breakthrough ovulations, which means that if you are engaging in sexual union at that point and you actually have a new little life that forms and it's floating down the uterine or down the fallopian tube into the uterus and nitidates into the uterine wall, forms placenta and everything. That's how it's supposed to happen. But guess what? Chemical contraception has that nifty little safety net that, we had breakthrough ovulation. Well, we can't have that. Okay, we're going to slough off everything. It's like having a really heavy period for the woman. It's an abortifacient. Tons of women who are on chemical contraception have had abortions and have no idea that it even happened. Okay. So actually with NFP, they're like, oh, okay. It's completely safe because there's no chemicals, nothing getting stuck into the woman's body, which, by the way, why is it always still the woman's body? Okay, because it's not about the woman's needs. It's about sinful man's. But that's one of the things. And she's on contraception, or you're using any kind of contraception. Ladies, you always have to be available. You have to come up with these, like, I have a headache tonight excuse to be, you know. So not like, well, maybe if you would do something more around the house, this would, you know, work better. Oh, okay, well, I need to get my act together. But it's great because at this point you can say, well, are we open to life? And if you say, absolutely not, this is a really bad time, you know, not because we're planning for that, you know, Vegas trip. I would ever recommend going to Vegas. That's up to you, but that would not be my place. If you're like, hey, we're going to go to Glacier National Park. Even though that's an awesome place to go, that's not, you know, Jimmy or vacation at Glacier National Park. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Jimmy's going to always be more awesome than that awesome vacation would be. So anyway. Well. Unless it was raining your entire time at Glacier National Park. You know, but you're not going to be at your 50th wedding anniversary thinking, oh, should have taken that trip, Anyway, well, you might be, but you know darn well that in your heart of hearts, it's better to have Jimmy, even if he's in jail right now. So anyway, but you can be saying, heavens, this is the worst time that we could possibly, it'd be easier. You might say, no, this is a really good time. Wonderful. Last month it wasn't. But you know what? In a very stereotypical example, you got a raise at work. Now we are in a much better financial position. This is great, It's completely adaptable to however you want to do this, Or you might be thinking, it's not the best time. It wouldn't be terrible to get pregnant, but well, great. If you're trying to get pregnant, right there, you know exactly when the prime time is. If you're like, it's probably not the best time, you want to avoid that. Just put a couple days here, a couple days there, okay? If you're like, absolutely can't, no, this is bad, add a few more days. And you're like, wait, what are you, this day thing you keep referring to, what is that? You'll have to abstain. And sometimes I'll get people to be like, what? And I'm like, oh yeah, you ever heard that phrase, absence makes the heart grow fonder? Yeah. This is why, I'm going into many, many details. This is why I say to couples, hey, guess what? I know you want to, like, your couples that are engaged, and, I said, there's a reason why Satan's pounding you hard. He wants to really wear you down. Because I know you want to be married like it was yesterday, but I said, this is the foundation. Because how you relate to each other right now, because you're going to be going back to that many, 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 many times. Where at that point in your month, in that month, you're saying, okay, we really can't get pregnant right now. Okay, great. So this is like when we were dating, and I think the guy really needs to lead in that, and to say, okay, that's fine, we're good, But you can't be like, because people are like, well, that's going to kill your relationship. Yeah, if your mindset is like, okay, fine. Well, yeah, coldness is going to harm it. But especially, like I said, I think the guy needs to lead in this to say, that's okay. We're good. Okay. And then you got to think, okay, how do I express my love to my spouse? In this case, to my wife or vice versa. I hate to, I'm not trying to be crude here, but I'm trying to be very specific in a non-genital fashion so that she doesn't feel hunted at all. That she's not like afraid to hug you back or to kiss you back because all of a sudden you're like, oh, maybe she changed her mind. No, that's stupid. Guys, we got to lead on this. Well, some of us don't because of obvious reasons. And well, anyway, you understand. But what is that all about? You're like, wait, this sounds hard. Yeah, it is. It's simple because it's not complicated. You don't have to read any instructions on this one. You take the classes. It's kind of like riding a bike. Although I took the classes, and I tell you what, I was in the corner. The door was like way over there, and I was a biology major. I got all this stuff, but I'm like, this is way more information for a guy who's never going to be married that I don't need to know about a woman's system and everything of that nature. But if you're a married guy, it's really good information. I always liken it to kind of like learning how to ride a bike. At first, it's super awkward, but once you get it, you're good. I've been on a bike for years. I pull myself. I could get on Father Hess's bike, and I got it. Once you learn it, you're good. I am so sorry. There's just so much here. Okay, my take-home point.
He's missed you guys.
Yeah, see, this is my outlet. So, couples that use contraception, 50% divorce rate. They're like everybody else. Sad. And I'm not ragging on it. I know there are victims of divorce, and I'm not ragging on that. But it's not a good thing. Couples use NFP. Less than 5% roughly divorce rate. Wait, what? What in the world happened there? Okay, if you're raising a family and you got a school 5 miles down the road there and 5 miles up the road there, and you're like, hey, that school 5 miles down the road, 50% of the kids drop out before they graduate. The school up the road 5 miles, 5% of the kids drop out before they graduate. You're not thinking, I don't know, which school should, this is a hard one. This is really, they got a good sports program at that dropout school. No, you'd be like, they're doing something wrong there. We're sending Jimmy to that school for obvious reasons. So you think, what in the world's going on? I said, how many couples, you just know instinctively, what do you want to build your marriage on? Trust, self-sacrifice, generosity, et cetera, et cetera. None of those things come easy. You know, getting virtue, living, you know, in a virtuous way, it's not like falling off a log. You got to practice it. Beautiful thing about NFP, it orients the married couple to God. Okay, it not always easy, but I tell you what, oh my gosh, I could go so much longer. I'm holding myself back. Yeah, I know it's hard to see that, but you know, there are times where God's gonna be like, you're gonna be like on the branch, hugging the tree, and you're like, we're not going down any further. And God's like, no, come on. It's like Peter, you know, come out of the boat, come on. You're like, oh, this branch is getting thin. Guess what? That's what God wants. Because if you are moving together as a couple, if you're contracepting, you're on different spots on that table in many ways. But if you are trying to live, okay, in this non-contraceptive, this openness to life. Openness to life is just saying, hey, God, we're going to let you be God. We're going to, you know, God has given a certain system that you can make decisions, you can kind of plan, but it's ultimately saying, God, you're ultimately in charge, not me. And I guess I have to tell this story because it is just, to me, it's a home run. Okay, but as He calls you out on that branch, and that branch is getting a little bit thinner. Yeah, that's not easy. But guess what? You're growing as a married couple. You're growing in your faith in God. You're trusting Him. And guess what's happening? The two of you are growing together. And so couples that use contraception, they might have a very nice marriage. Okay, but they don't have the marriage. They can't have the marriage that God has intended them because they just don't have that openness to Him and to each other. So let me conclude. And throw a couple things out for all of you who are preparing for confession. Let me conclude the whole contraception kind of thing. Okay, so I have friends in Dayton, and they have 7 children. Okay, whew. You know, and you think, well, clearly NFP hasn't worked for them at all. No, they wanted these children. So this, because sometimes people, you think, well, these quote unquote good Catholic families, they'll have so many children, so clearly this, you know, NFP stuff is not working. No, many of them, probably most of them. Not all of them, because some people use the theory of NFP. They're not really practicing. They're just kind of like, we kind of get the idea here. You know, no, you want to be precise about it. But oftentimes, you know, if you use NFP, you're getting close. You're being drawn closer to God. Or at least you're being oriented, and you're being drawn closer to each other. And you're just generous. You just become more generous. So. This couple, okay, long story short. So I've known them for years and years and years. Greg and Stephanie are their names. And Stephanie, God rest his soul, but her father was just a piece of work. Okay, he would rag on her for having so many kids, and she's like, okay, Deb, which one would you rather didn't exist? You know, when you put it down to a face, that's a whole different thing. And her kids, I tell you what, that's a whole other thing. Her kids were the first kids. I'm like, wait a second, I actually like your kids. I can actually have even your little ones, I can have a conversation. They're really, because Greg and Stephanie are real no nonsense about the discipline. Not like harsh, but they're just no nonsense. Like, okay, we're not taking that. So they have a big backyard. And so they used to be like, okay, put your shoes on. Even in the middle of winter, put your shoes and coat on. You're running laps. I'm like, what? It's winter. You know, drives me warm, you know. Anyway, so they're very, you know, no nonsense about that. But, you know, so the kids, you know, so they were, I think, maybe, and she had some rough pregnancies, really rough pregnancies. Kind of, some of the pregnancies, she's like, I'm in denial that I'm even pregnant. So stay-at-home mom, homeschool mom, so she's with the kids all the time. She's had some real serious postpartum kind of stuff as well. So I think when she had just given birth to, maybe it was the 6th child. I said, so, sometime after that, I said, you think you're done? What are your thoughts, you know? And she's like, you know, when she gave birth, she's like, I can never do this again, you know? And that's like, you know, I always tell people, look, don't make decisions at that point, okay? Let it ride a little bit. She's like, it just doesn't quite seem like we're all here. So she's pregnant with her 7th, my last godson, Isaac, gave birth. And sometime after that, you know, maybe a year or so, she's like, I feel like maybe we're all here. She said, So we're not going to actively try anymore, she said. I'm certainly not going to, we're not going to do anything crazy or anything like that to shut that off, but we're just not going to actively try anymore. So one day I was talking to her on the phone, and she's like, wait, I got too many ears around me. Let me get to a different spot. And I'm like, she's probably at that time in her late 40s. I'm like, she gonna tell me she's pregnant? And she's like, I'm pregnant. And I expected the next words to be like, I cannot believe this. At that point, I think they were sort of using the principles of the NFP, but they weren't really using it really, in a very strong, precise way. But she's like, never once did she ever say, I can't believe this is happening. She's like, wow, God must really want me pregnant, because we weren't expecting this at all. And she did. It's the one and only miscarriage she ever had, about maybe, I don't know how many weeks into and the kids were just, crushed. They were crushed. Of course, all the boys were like, because it's 3 boys and 4 girls, so like, it was a boy. So now it's 4 and 4, And they named him Raphael. But she never once freaked out. She never once, I was expecting, just at any moment, she's going to be like, I can't deal with this. I'm, older, I got all these things. And I attribute that all to the fact that both of them, in particular, because she's bearing the brunt of this, she's open to life. She's open to that reality, and that has oriented her in a way that just, I don't know, it was remarkable to see, and it was just a really good thing for me to see. Okay, so I know I'm already 5 minutes over what I promised you, and I apologize. So if you are, that is such a big topic, beautiful topic, and an important topic. If you are preparing for confession, okay, and right now we kind of have we have a very set kind of like reality that we're trying to, the whole, social distancing and stuff like that. So we have kind of a different scenario. It's all behind the screen and everything about it. But if you're like, hey, this is so-and-so, that's fine. If you want to let us know who you are, I've had some people say, hey, this is, Bob, Bill, whatever. That's fine. It's not going to be like, oh, all right, now I know. It's it. So what do you do? Okay, I would say go through the examination concept, the longer one, starting on page 19. I would say don't be meticulous to the point of like, I think I might have possibly done that. Maybe I have a vague memory. I'm not really quite sure. Don't strain, yourself on this. But, go through it. I would really recommend writing things down. Not that you have to necessarily bring that, but if you've got a few years on you, you're going to have a collection there. There is nothing I'm a frugal man, but I would dare say I would put $50 out there that says you can't tell me. Yeah, you can make something up. I used to belong to mafia. Yeah. So then you have to be like, well, then I lied to a priest in confessional, and that's going to really deep sex me on that one. So, but you can't come with something that I haven't heard before. And I would almost say, I don't know. It's not like we're like, well, what'd you hear today? Well, let me show you. But I would say almost, even though Father Hess isn't even a year into it completely, I would say that you'd be hard pressed to impress him to be like, really? Now I love behind the screen confessions because I'm not always guarded with my expressions. So I know I've had times where I'm like, oh, world, and I probably doesn't give you any confidence. You're like, I'm not going to him. But when people, every once in a while you're like, okay. That's so you probably don't want to go to me. You probably want to go to But maybe that just shows I'm as human as the next guy. But I tell you what, even at those times, when someone says something that leaves me a little bit like, really? I haven't heard that one before. I have the greatest respect. There is no way. The only way. I'll tell you what. There's 2 ways that you can unimpress me. There's only two ways that you're going to have, that I will have a lesser opinion of you. One is if you just flat out like lie, and I'm like, okay, that's clearly you're completely lying on this one, or I don't know how I would really know that. Or if you're just like, yeah, I mean, like I'm doing drugs, but I don't really care, I'll be like, what in class has not sunk in? Where did I fail with you? So that will unimpress me. Or if you come in and you're like, well, I was baptized, 30 plus years ago. I've been impatient. I think I used God's name in vain once or twice, so that's all I can think of. I'm like, okay, you really haven't examined your conscience very well, have you? But if you come in with a laundry list from here to Hades, and you're like, oh my gosh, Father, you're going to think terrible things of me, I'll be like, man, I'm impressed that you, A, have that self-awareness by God's grace, that you were able to examine your life, which is going to be absolutely freeing. It's going to be just huge. You're going to walk out a completely new person. B, you got the courage to do this, because this is not easy. I know it's not easy. I've been on the other side, and I've been on the other side with some bad situations of like, what, why? Where priests were yelling at me, and just, that's a whole other story. Many years ago. I don't know, I don't list all my other points, but you know what? There's nothing you can say other than those two, the first two. There's nothing, if you take this seriously, there's nothing you can say that will make the priest think anything but more of you. And for that matter, you can go behind the screen and we won't even know who you are. It's not like, wait, say these words quickly together because I think I've figured out who you are. I don't care. I won't be like, wait a second. I do have it. I don't know if this person, I have had somebody who I don't know if they're intentionally trying to do this false accent, in confession that sort of throw me off. It's kind of like a little annoying because I'm like, I know that this is, it's kind of bizarre. But whatever, I don't care, if that's, but really, we don't care because we're sinners just like everybody else. We're on the other side of the fence just like everybody else. I can say in 24 years as a priest, you've all met the people that just, like I said, they're not taking something seriously that they should be. That's kind of sometimes a little bit hard to deal with. But anybody who comes in there and it's just like, Father, here's what I did. My impression, my admiration for that person grows. Okay, so there's nothing. If you take it seriously, you're going to benefit. Our Lord's going to be so pleased because ultimately it's between you and Him. We're just the channels, that God is using. There's nothing that you could possibly ever, even if I'm like, I never heard that one before, and I'm not going to be like, oh, here's a gold star. Never heard that one, But there's nothing you can say ever that would make a priest think less of you. And really, in some respects, it doesn't make any difference what we think, because it's all about you. It is an intimate encounter with our Lord. Okay? And I use that word intimacy not in the way that our culture uses it, but in a heart-to-heart intimacy. Okay? So always remember that. Never ever, if you meet a jerk, a priest who's a jerk in the confessional, you can walk out and you can go to another priest. If you're not being treated in a fair... Now, I will be honest with you. You're like, well, I'm selling drugs. I'll be like, okay, you need to stop that. You're like, really? Yeah. So I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, it's okay. As long as you're just doing it on the weekends. It's just your night job. That's okay. I can understand it. No, I'll be upfront with you. But if you ever meet a priest that doesn't treat you with respect and the dignity that you deserve, you can step out and say, Father, thank you very much. May God bless you. That maybe not what your initial reaction is, and you can walk out and just go to another priest. Okay? If you've had a bad experience, and I've been on that side of a bad experience, don't let, there's that old saying that it applies in a lot of different ways, don't leave Peter because of Judas. Okay? If you have a bad experience, priest, I mean, we're human. You know, sometimes we have bad days. That doesn't mean, there's sort of an old sort of joke, if you will, that this woman went to confession and said, Father, you know, it's been 25 years since my last confession. He proceeded just to rip into her, and why has it been so long? And she's, what? But Father, what? She said, Father, it's been 25 years because 25 years ago I met a priest just like you. So, okay. You know. So I will, and I'm sure any priest worth his salt will say, okay, so you've got some serious things to work on. Let me give you maybe some words of advice. This is not spiritual direction, so this is not the time to be like, okay, well, let me ask you, but if you have a question about something that, Father, I'm not really sure if this is sin or not, or, you know, whatever it may be, you know, that's fine. We'll give whatever guidance that we can in that regards. But, so you want to look through, you want to examine your conscience, you want to kind of, you know, if you have questions about, well, I don't know if this is being too hard on myself or this or that, you know, you can either bring that to confession and just say, Father, I'm not really quite sure, and the priest will help guide you in that sense. Or you can always call us too. You don't even have to let us know who you are. Be like, hey, Father, I have a sort of confessional question. So, and I'm not going to be like, well, who is this? Care, you know? And I'm not going to be, actually, my caller ID doesn't work on my phone. So you're really in good shape there, you know? But I'm not going to be like, I don't, honestly, and don't take this the wrong way. I don't care who you are. I mean, I really don't. If you are coming to encounter the mercy of our Lord, and you are taking this seriously, which I presume 99.9% of the people who actually come are, I don't care who you are. It doesn't make any difference.
Would it be wise for those of us doing this for the first time to have a little bit more of an extended record to make an appointment?
Well, it's kind of a weird time because we're the whole social distance. I feel like we're breaking the law right now. We're on the edge. Which we're not. I mean,
Chili, they're breaking the law.
Yeah, that's a little.
With him asking that, but you know, with the days, we're kind of playing this day by day. You know, the state's doing this. It seems like every week they add a few more days.
Right.
When it comes to the day that, you know, some of them gonna get baptized. You know, I've been baptized, but I never confess, and I know I got to confess before it's all done with. What are we going to do?
Well, put it this way. You can come, because we are hearing confessions right now. Okay, so we are, I think it's on the website, so like on Thursday, we really don't have, it's strangely enough, we don't have like huge crowds of people. So really, if you think, I want to start doing this, and I would encourage anyone who is like, okay, I feel comfortable, this is good, I'm ready to go. If you have any questions, because I really, and just for the sake of time, I am so sorry that this is going so long, but as you well know, I can talk a little bit. But if you have questions, feel free to give us a call. Okay, more than happy. So right now we're kind of we're not doing face-to-face kind of meetings just because we're trying to, it's the whole social distancing kind of stuff, yada yada yada. I'm happy to do that over the phone. But if you feel like, okay, I think I'm ready to go, I tell you what, just come to confession, even if it takes 10 minutes. That's why it is good. If you have a list, you might get a little rattled, you might get a little nervous at that point. If you have a list, and it might not be a bad thing to have a list, because then it's going to keep you on target. You won't get rattled. You won't get, because I know when I'm like, okay, I probably should get going here, and then I'm like, okay, I don't remember these things and this and that. So make sure you properly dispose of that list. Don't let it leave it. Don't sign your name. Don't put Bob's sins, Bob's sins. Don't put that on there, and then when you leave the confessional, stick it in your mouth. You don't have to eat it, but make sure you just don't let that fall into the wrong hands. Just don't. Obviously, be careful about that. Some people put it on their phone. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but whatever it may be, whatever's you're more comfortable, that's going to help you. It's going to help you just feel more comfortable, and it's going to help you, not kind of lose your focus and everything of that nature. You can come Once you make your first confession, then I would say you want to make your second confession, your third confession. You know, how frequently? Well, if you would have the misfortune of falling into a mortal sin, you want to get there as soon as possible. You know, but on the average, you know, the church says, you know, once a month. We should definitely be able to find enough in our life to say, yep, time to get kind of spiritually cleansed in that regard. So. It's, I think, intuitive. I mean, if you're looking at, and I apologize for not maybe detailing this out as much as I should, but on the back, page 35, just kind of a basic how to go to confession. So you just go in there, you know, in this case, it's going to only be behind the screen at this point, but you just, you know, you can say, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. You can start it whatever way you want, but this is a traditional way. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. And in this case, you'd say, this is my first confession. And then your next confession, you know, however long that may be, a couple weeks or a month or whatever it may be, then you say, you know, bless me, Father, it's been a couple weeks or it's been a month or a couple months since my last confession, whatever it may be. You don't have to be precise about that. Just gives the priest. So if, say, for example, if someone says, bless me, Father, for I have sinned, it's been 25 years since my last confession, then I know, okay, I might need to help this person. This person might be, you know, really extra nervous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, just helps. And then you just, you know, confess your sins.
And that's one thing that we talked about, because I believe was Father Hayes the day that you hand out the books. And I even joked that I need to make an appointment. I need both of you guys in there together because it's going to be a trip.
Well, you know what? I tell you what. It will. Tony, you might get that. I'll be like,
$50.
I was gonna say, all right, Tony, here's your $50. You know, but really, honestly, for the number of years that I've been doing this, not that doesn't make me an expert, but you know, so I've been a priest for almost 24 years. I've had numerous people who would tell me, "Oh my gosh, Father, should I pack a lunch? Should I pack you a lunch? You know, this is going to take a long time," and it never does. It really, and I don't mean that in a way to be like, "Oh well, you're not," but I think it looks so monumental, totally understandable. It looks so monumental from your perspective. If you've never done this, it's like, oh my goodness, what in the world? But really, it's not nearly, it won't be nearly, you'll walk away thinking, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was. Not that I'm saying this, but it really, that's been my experience, and I don't think I've ever had anyone said, Father, this was worse than I ever thought possible. You know, this is the worst experience. I have everybody coming out thinking, man, and they don't always express this, but so many of them express me like, this is awesome. I feel this. Because you know, when I say those words, more particularly, when Jesus says the words through his priest, and I absolve you from your sins, money in the bank. If you're sorry, boom, it's gone. It's kind of like if you get in an argument, I know from a guy's perspective, so if you guys get in an argument with your wife, and you're like, you know you were an idiot. You go to her and say, honey, I'm really sorry. And she's like, yeah, okay. And she walks away, you're like, wait.
Exactly.
I forget. I'm not really sure. But she said, okay, you know what? That was kind of cruel what you said, but I forgive you. And I love you. Totally different. You know, okay, we're back. Okay, gotta keep it. You know, so it's one of the great graces. Another great grace is because one of the particular graces given to us in this sacrament is that it helps us with our struggle against sin. Okay? And that, you know, people say, whoa, you know, I don't have this powerful. We'll come back to this more, but
I think it would be a great outcome after the first time it's over. I think it's just, you know.
It is.
Oh
yeah, and that is totally normal, and it's not like, oh, Tony,
38 years. Can you imagine? That's easy, $50.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you. If all of a sudden you're like, oh my heavens, you know, you might get that $50 look of like.
And one other thing is right now, one thing that, you know, with all the situation going on, the day we went to the church, we walked in there, we were able to get in there inside and look. Mm-hmm. And I even told Missy, I said, I don't think I can go in there and sit behind that screen. I'm more like the person that I need to see somebody when I talk. You know, to me, I'll be like, just it's already weird because, and I say weird is not in the bad way, but
Right.
it's just because being the first time, you're doing this after 38 years. So I'm gonna come with suitcases in there full of list. And, you know, I like to sit down and talk, you know what I mean? I don't wanna go in there right now because I know it might be some people in there behind me waiting on it. So I don't know how long it's gonna take. It could be 15 minutes, which I seriously doubt that.
I really, I mean,
Just
great.
long schedule.
Maybe a couple hours.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I have never, ever, I don't think, I mean, if a confession, if confessions last a chunk of time, usually that means a couple of things. Either the person is very talkative and they're just sort of talking about all kinds of, or we've got sidetracked on something, or it's become sort of turned in the spiritual direction, and it really isn't. But if people are there just to confess their sins, honestly, for the most part, I think even first time, even if you've got 50 years to confess, I'd say, if you say, how much time should I you use to prepare? It could be hours. I don't know exactly how long it will take. But once you get your list, you know, and I don't mean it has to be a list, but I think it's very helpful, especially if you've got a bunch of years. How long should you plan to be in the confessional, roughly? You got a list there? 5 minutes. Honestly, maybe 10 at the most. Unless it's like, okay, this is a big issue, we need to talk about this. I mean, there's something that we need, but, you know, for the most part, it really goes much quicker and easier than you could ever imagine. You know, it's just, from this side of the confessional, I'm sure it looks intimidating as hell, you know, but it will keep you from hell. So it's awesome. But it really, it's kind of like, it maybe a little bit like, all of a sudden as a kid, you're like, wait, there's no training wheels on this bike? This is going to be, now granted, that's not a perfect analogy because usually we end up falling and skinning ourselves up, and it's not going to happen in the confessional, you know. But it looks extremely intimidating, you know. And even if you've got a boatload, I mean, granted, if you've been the bad guy for the mafia, then be like, oh, Tony, we got some things to talk about.
Hi, my name is Denny. I'm there to help you.
You've been running drugs on the side in that secret compartment of your truck, and be like, well,
Can't tell you, Father.
that's interesting. Haven't had that one. That's a $50 one, you know. But I tell you what, it is. We've heard almost anything that anyone in sort of normal society deals with. We've heard it. We've heard it multiple times, and that doesn't. It's just. We're not scandalized. We're not, you know. I think some, you know. This is just human nature. And I tell you what, the reason that I have never had that I mean, by God's grace, I don't feel like, you know, to the point where I've been sort of scandalized or just like horrified at what people. I mean, because all I have to do is look in the mirror and think, oh yeah. So, because I can look in the mirror and look at and see myself and know that I'm a sinner and I've done some stupid
I think the worst thing is just the image that we create in our heads about what's going to happen.
You're absolutely right.
Because I was with Jason the first time that he confessed, and I believe it was with the father.
I think not because I remember it,
And
because
he
you
was
told me this.
shaking, and he was walking on like this all the way down, and I was
Yeah.
like, I gotta change my face because I don't want him to look, you know, because I'm like,
Terrible, Jace, terrible. This is terrible.
and I don't want to even look at him. And he goes, Dad, I think I'm gonna go confess. I said, just go. I remember getting up, and he kneeled down and went to the line. And when he walked, he was getting ready to walk in. I went like this. I turned around, and he looked at me again, and I kept going like this. After he came out, and he was a different person. I think he was so relieved, and he was like a ghost. You seen the clothes, but you can see right through him. That's how scared he was.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then after that, after we go to church on Sundays, and every time we walk in, he go down, sit down. Okay, I'm gonna go to the line, and then just every Sunday, and I was like, there's
I mean, and I can't say it from your perspective because I grew up, both Father Hess and I grew up, so you grow up and you just sort of, you slide into that target. I know it's intimidating as all get out, I'm sure, but you will step away, and you'll be a changed person, literally, and you will say, huh. But you'll never, ever, ever have to bring all that stuff ever again. It's gone. So, okay. I don't know if I gave you enough to work with. So the game plan, and I will end with this. God bless you all. You're even out, man. So what we're going to do, I don't know what our target date is going to be. Wherever you're at, this is not like, oh, well, you don't fit into, you know what? Everybody's different, and we're going to just walk with each one of you individually, whatever it may be. So if you're ready to go at this point, wonderful. If you're not ready to go at this point, that's perfectly fine. So however it may be, if you're ready to go, the confession at this point, okay? We're good to go. We'll have you squared away before you even know it. Squeaky clean, and your life will be totally changed, forever. We don't know our target date. It's kind of Pentecost, but you know what? That's just a target date. We don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. We definitely want to get some more catechesis in before we get to that point, and I've got sort of my idea of doing that in just a moment. So we're just going to walk this one step by step. I apologize for the uncertainty, but I think we're all in the same boat. We all recognize, look, we're just kind of, we're just going one moment at a time here. So what I'm going to propose is that, because I want to, it's a dual purpose. But I think it'll be good for you. It wouldn't be my normal way of doing it, but I figure, well, look, we're in uncertain or unusual circumstances. So this is why I gave you this prototype, if you will, this other short catechism. What did I say? Yeah, short catechism. So what I'm going to do is, and this would be, you won't have to sit for almost 3 hours. I'm so sorry. But, well, yeah, you could have been destroyed by, well, sure, okay. So what I'm going to do, probably pretty soon, sometime maybe next week, I'm going to kind of morph into, because I do think for everybody, this is a prime opportunity for us to get deeper into our Eucharistic faith. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this, I'm going to do more than just read it in a video, but I'm going to, section by section by section. So what I would, well, it's more than encourage, so require, whatever, but so I'm going to be teaching you, we're going to kind of keep this pandemic distance. I'm hoping in a couple weeks we should be back to normal, but so my daily videos very soon is going to be going to the catechesis on the Holy Eucharist. So 10 to 15 minutes can be a heck of a lot easier, then you can kind of fit it in whenever you want to. But I wanted to give you this tonight so that you have this as a reference. I'm going to be referencing this document, okay, but then sort of adding to it in that regards. So that would be either your, even though Lent is going to be soon over, your penance will continue because you will need to listen to me, watch me. You don't have to even watch me because it's not like I'm doing anything exciting. Like, wow, I can juggle and teach at the same time. So it's nothing worth watching. You can mute. Well, don't mute it, because if you mute it and just watch me, then that is just that's sheer terror. But you can put the thing right in front of the screen or whatever it is you want to do, and just listen to me, however you want to do it. But that's what I'm going to do to get, because this Eucharistic catechesis is essential. And I will end right there. I don't know if Missy or Father Hess has anything they want to add.
Well, get your saints together, so when it's
thank you for your patience. I was not intending this to go so far, but you know, the scary thing is, I would get a little tired. I mean, I'm sure I get sick of listening to myself, but we could go we could go to 11 o'clock, and I'd be like, well, just a few more things. So I don't know if that makes you feel like, wow, we dodged a bullet tonight, or I'm not sure. So let me give you a blessing, because if I don't, then you won't be able to leave, and I won't shut up. So may Almighty God bless you, Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. May God bless you and your families and keep all of you safe. And you're in our prayers. Anything that we can do, give us a call. We'd love to. You know me, short on words. Flee before I start talking.